The second you take something for granted is the very second you lose it. Welcome to Life is Styn, where our goal is to make your life yours again. Today, as always, we're going to be talking about a very important topic, and that is taking things for granted, and why it's so valuable to notice the things we take for granted, and better yet, learn to appreciate what we have and where we are. Even if it's not necessarily our end goal or where we want to be. So let's get started here by simply defining what it means to take things for granted. It means 1. Fail to properly appreciate someone or something, especially as a result of overfamiliarity, the comforts that people take for granted. 2. Assume that something is true without questioning it. Those companies challenge beliefs that everyone else took for granted. Okay, now that we've defined it, let's get into the theory part of today, but I want to start off first by saying this. Most people wish they were somewhere else. But I'll tell you this now. If you feel like this in your current state of mind, even if you manage to be somewhere else, you would probably be thinking the same thing there. So make the most of where you are now. Deal with whatever is happening, whatever is the case now. We can waste our whole lives worrying about shit that will never happen or wishing we were there or not here. But this is where it's crucial to take back control in our lives. Remember, accept what you can't control and control what you can. That usually is your actions, your feelings, or how you manage them. It's what you do that matters, not what life throws at you or what others do. Now, one of many things I want to make clear for you is I understand if you're coming from a place of not having anything to be grateful for. I understand coming from a place of hating your life and hating yourself. And I understand what it's like to not appreciate anything you currently have or who you currently are. But know that that is just a perspective that can change, not something that's objectively true. Now, just telling you you're taking life for granted will, in most cases, it'll make things worse, obviously. Usually when people are in lower states of in their life, they don't really care to hear that it could be worse or that they don't want to hear how they can be helped. Usually, because if I tell you it could be worse, then it discredits how you're feeling, and you're very validated in how you feel. You can't deny how you feel or just lie about it. It doesn't work like that. More times than not, we accept the suffering and despair and make it an inherent quality in our life. And honestly, when I was in the lowest states of my life, there wasn't really anyone who could help me but myself. So let's take a look at what taking things for granted does. It dismisses any value in your life that your life currently has. We get so stuck in this society by doing enough, having enough, or being enough that we normally end up living in a life or perspective where we don't do enough, we don't have enough, and we aren't enough. And when that happens, you can see the vicious cycle it leads to. And it's not easy to come out of those states of mind. It takes work. It takes actual effort. It takes holding yourself accountable for the position you play in your own life. And it takes pushing forward against all odds. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that self-help is easy. It's one of the hardest things to do. You have to face yourself, your traumas, your fears, all the things you hate and refuse to look at. And you have to accept them as part of your reality just to heal it. But it is also the most rewarding. As you rise in the self-help journey, the masters dissolve suffering completely and live in peace and bliss regardless of circumstance. And consequently, then they create the life they wish for themselves out of fulfillment, not lack. So back to the topic at hand. I tend to spin off a lot, but all of it's relevant information to help you get the bigger picture here. So like I said, we especially, as a citizen of America or first world countries, we take a lot for granted. But let me remind you, you're validated in your feelings. It's okay to not feel grateful for anything. It's okay to be in the state you're in. It's okay to not be okay, but it's also okay to be okay. But just because it's okay doesn't mean we need to use it as an excuse to be how we want to be or how we are. Be who you want to be without excuses or victim mentality. As I was saying, in first world countries, we take things for granted. How good we really have it. Generally, we have plenty to be grateful for, but sometimes we don't have the awareness to see it. So while some people might think you have the most luxurious life, you might very well hate it. It's a clear change in perspective. It's clear that a change in perspective needs to happen to make you go from suffering to being grateful and appreciative and loving. But there needs to be a change in the psyche. Whether you know it or not, let's run this thought experiment. Take a look at everything that happened in your life, whether good or bad. If you're listening to this, especially this far in the video, look at your life. Up to this point, you had everything you needed to make it to this point. Maybe it wasn't everything you wanted, but it was everything you needed. When you had trouble with finances, when life was pounding on you, bad after bad after bad, when life made you collapse, and now you're here. You had everything you needed to make it to this point. You managed. You figured it out, didn't you? Maybe you're still figuring out, but you're kicking, you're breathing, and you're fighting another day. Give yourself credit for everything you did up to this point, but acknowledge you had everything you needed. And the crazy sequence of events that happened to lead you to this point, imagine living your life thinking you had everything you will ever need. Well, first of all, through the law of correspondence, a physical, scientific phenomena, or through God or Brahma or Buddha or Allah, whatever it may be for you, if you live your life that way, life will inevitably be that way for you. A mind that sees all as pure sees all, or a mind that is pure sees all as pure. A mind that thinks all is rotten sees all as rotten. That's not objective. The only thing objectively true about reality is that it is entirely subjective. So we change your mind and your whole life will change. Now, let me share you a little story about myself. This is the life of Styn, and all the things I share here I have personally experienced or learned about myself and others, and I hope through my experiences I can help others on their journey in life. So anyways, there's a point in life where we ended up getting kicked out, and obviously we could have taken it as a victim mentality because I don't think we were very justified in getting kicked out, but obviously that was what was happening. So I accepted, what was out of my control, and I did what I could to control. So we were getting kicked out, and of course when you get kicked out of your house, you're always so worried about, oh no, how am I going to find a house? How are we going to make it work? How am I going to pay for it? All of these things come in. And, I thought to myself, I was like, all right, I just kind of had that realization at that point where I'm like, I'm done stressing about it, because everything up to this point to get to even this place, from the last few times that we've had to leave our house or move or any of these things where crazy things happen and you don't know how it's going to work out. And then I've just realized, I had a realization, it always worked out. We always ended up finding a house. We always ended up figuring out how to pay for it. No matter what happened, it worked itself out, and we always found out. So in that sense, I found out, I was like, oh, you don't have to stress about it. I was like, I don't have to stress about how we're going to get a new house or how we're going to pay for it or what we're going to do. And so I didn't. I told myself I wasn't going to stress about it. And of course, everyone around me was stressing out because, that's just a normal response to stress out because you don't know if you're going to have a place to live. You don't know how you're going to pay for it. You don't know if you're going to be on the streets, any of those things. And really, the funny thing is when you work yourself into these crazy you play out all these stories in your mind, you can actually kind of play it out to where it kind of becomes ridiculous and then loses its power. But even if you don't, sometimes we think things are way worse than they actually are. The mind paints things to be way worse than they actually are. But anyways, so I stopped stressing, and then almost like the last week before we had to move out, it was like all the stars aligned. All the stars aligned. We ended up finding a house. Really nice people, really good price, all this stuff. We ended up moving in, and it ended up working itself out. And so the only difference there is I didn't have to stress about it. So then I realized, oh, it was going to happen anyway. But our minds think because we stressed about it, because we worried about it, because we did all those things, that's why it happened. Well, I proved to myself in that moment that the stress, the worry, the anxiety, none of that stuff was actually necessary for it to happen. It just worked itself out. So from that point on, I stopped worrying about the future. I stopped worrying about if it's going to work out or if I have enough or if the bills will get paid, because I know I have and will always have everything I need in my life, and that life works for me whether I can see it or not. And even on days where I recognize old mind patterns that think, what if I don't? Even when tragedy strikes, even if I lose everything, even if I die or become a mangled corpse, it doesn't matter because I have everything I could ever ask for. Now, here's where I go into a rant about the physical and the mental. Listen, I'm so grateful for everything I have in my life. And it took a long time to get there. For my friends, my family, my job, the material things I own. And I try my best to not take things for granted because I did for a long time. And my life was miserable and had no value for me. And I didn't want to live like that anymore. But regardless, life isn't meaningful because I have family, friends, the things I want, etc., etc. Life is meaningful because I make it meaningful, or because you make it meaningful. Excuse me. When I don't take things for granted, I can see the beauty of the universe. I can appreciate every drink of water, every ounce of food I have, my home, my luxuries. I'm doing better than probably 90% of the people in the entire world just because food, water, and shelter is so accessible to me. But when we are suffering, it doesn't help to compare life situation because it'll just make you feel worse. That you have plenty to be grateful for, and others are literally constantly under gunfire and murder and rape and no water and no food, and you think you're suffering? See, we can't compare pain like that because only you can carry the pain that you have. So only look at the other side of the coin if it helps you to be more grateful. If it doesn't change your perspective, if it helps you to stop taking things for granted, then viewing the world like that is probably healthier. I'm grateful now because I see how good I have it. But also my gratitude goes much further than just the things I have. Listen, the material things don't matter. They're fun, it's cool, I appreciate them, but I'm not attached to them. My friends, my family, I'm so grateful for it, but they aren't my source of fulfillment and happiness. I am. So guess what? If I lose everything, if I lose my material possessions, if I lose my friends and family, I know I still have everything I need. I know I can still have plenty to be grateful for. I know I can still be at peace and blissful. I would be sad, of course. Obviously, I'd be devastated, I'd be sad, but peace and bliss isn't being happy 24/7. It's being okay when you're sad or mad or feeling any variety of negative or positive emotions or any negative or positive life situations. It's being okay even when devastation happens, or all of those things you hate and avoid so much so that it goes unnoticed in the world. And when that happens, that's when we let the greatest evils perpetuate, because we throw it in the back and put a blanket on it, and we lie to ourselves that it's not happening. Listen, there are people out there who actually don't think sex trafficking is a thing. They don't think all these nasty, terrible things are a thing. They actually refuse to believe that it's happening. But when we do that for all various types of problems is actually when we advocate it, because if it's not brought to our awareness, we can't fix it or stop it. Again, and as always, I'll rant off into many different things, but everything is connected. And sometime in your journey, the impractical things I talk about might become very practical for you. And the practical stuff will seem like child's play. So anyways, start out with this, because making big changes in the psyche doesn't happen overnight. And even when you make progress, you might notice the mind and ego try to revert back to its original state, because it will backlash and it will try to backstep. Because when you change your state of mind, it's like changing the ego. And when you change the ego, you have to kill the previous version of the ego. And the ego's role is to survive in its current state. So when you try to kill it, it bolsters its defense and it fights back. So in this journey, you're going to notice old mind patterns, because it's not easy to reprogram the system, especially if you've lived like this for 10, 20, 30, even more years. So just notice the old program, but give power to the new program. Let the thoughts you wish to have to be more powerful than the thoughts that you don't. Don't avoid them or reject them, obviously, but give them more power and examples to I love life. Then you give more power and examples to I hate life. So do this. Write down everything you are or even could be grateful for, whether it be big or small, and really be definitive about it. Like, I'm grateful for just my desk, my desk and these little things, instead of being like, I could have a better desk. No, just be grateful for what I have now. I'm very grateful for my desk. I'm grateful for my motorcycle, my friends, my family, my job, and find out what could make you grateful. Maybe your job isn't the best, but it does pay the bills. Does it help you to survive? Okay, well, in that sense, you can be grateful for it. Even find stuff you aren't grateful for and figure out how you could change your perspective to be grateful for it. Like, I hate my job, okay? But I'm so grateful that it challenges me to grow and be a stronger version of myself, just to tolerate it. Or I don't like this person, but I'm grateful because they helped me strengthen my patience. All the challenges in life I had to face, I would face again if it meant being the version of myself that I currently am. And it couldn't have happened if I babied the ego and gave it everything it wanted and never had any challenges or adversity. Listen, if I had everything I ever wanted growing up, my life would be a fucking mess, okay? So sometimes you have to, acknowledge and appreciate the things that you can't have or the things you've had to go through. Even if they're terrible, even if you're justified in your hate and your lack of gratitude, even if you're justified in those things, just because you're right doesn't mean that you should play that victim role. Because guess what? You're the only person who's going to be suffering, and maybe you're going to be making the people around you suffer. Okay, but all of those things that happened to me, even those bad, terrible things that I'd be justified to hate the world in, I am who I am today because of that. And even the trauma I had to work through that wounded me so bad, and after facing it and healing, also made me the best version of myself I am today. And I'd go through it again if it meant being the best version of myself. Because the hard times, the losses, those are what make you step outside the comfort zone, outside of complacency, that make you leave your old self behind and allow you to have a new, better version of you here, right now. Accept yourself as you are now. But just because you're grateful for everything you have, just because you accept who you are now, doesn't mean you won't stop striving for better. If anything, it's going to motivate you because you see what you're capable of. And once you start reaching those new heights, you'll want to see how high you can reach. And you'll unlock that potential that you're capable of. Loving life starts right now, because you experience an infinite number of right nows. You don't experience yesterday. You experience a picture, a thought, or an image of yesterday, or a feeling associated with that. You don't experience tomorrow. You experience a picture, a thought, or an image of tomorrow. You only experience right now. Look around and figure out for yourself what you need to become the best version of yourself, or even just a version of yourself who doesn't hate yourself and the universe. How do you want to be? Answer that for yourself. I can guarantee you this, because all people want the same thing. You want to be fulfilled. You want to be happy. You want to be complete. You want to be okay. You want to stop suffering. But we think we need people and things and accomplishments for this to happen, but that's just wrong. We think we need challenges and hard times to stop for this to happen. But let me fill you in on a secret. The only thing you need is yourself. Once you unlock the true potential of yourself, life will unfaze you, and you'll be able to appreciate the good and the bad. You'll be able to see the beauty of the universe, because an ego will see love and nurture as good, but an ego will also see death and destruction as bad, because the goal of the ego is to survive. But you are not the ego. A person with vision can see how death and destruction is necessary for new, better versions. Death and destruction is necessary to make way for new beauty, for new things to love and nurture. Discover your worth and know, so that you don't let others take you for granted. Learn the worth of things around you so you don't take others for granted, as well as the things around you for granted. Why? Because the second you appreciate everything in your life, the good, the bad, it's the very second you're going to dissolve suffering. It's the very second you'll stop being so biased towards what you experience. It's the very second that you will be free and can create the life you want. I know because I've done it. I know because I'm currently doing it. I know because I've proven it to myself. I'm still trying to embody these things every day. It's a constant effort. It's a constant battle. But at the same time, I let go of it all. The theory, the practice, the seeking. I can just be and live in harmony and peace, and I want that for you too. And on this journey, I just keep reaching new heights. And while I do that, I want to bring others with me. I mean, that's why I do this. Because I want you to come along here too. I want you to see those heights. So thank you. And if you ever need assistance on this journey, I'm here for you. No one can walk your path but you. But you can have people help you along the way. There's no shame in that. So again, thank you. And thank yourself for making it this far. Through everything. Give yourself some credit for once. As always, I can only do the best I can do right now. Unfortunately, that means I can miss information. It means I could have not gotten across what I wanted to get across because we're limited and language is limited. And trying to show others a realization is something that can only be known through understanding. And many times we understand incorrectly, so take everything with a grain of salt. Read between the lines and discover what is true for you. Don't take me on blind faith and belief. And recognize I could be wrong. What we're doing here is creating your own truth, not taking my truth and making it yours. So trust yourself. Trust the universe, or God, or Buddha, or science, or Allah. It doesn't matter because it's all the same thing. But too bad we argue and kill each other over the logistics of something that has no qualities, no limits, no one way of being, just like us humans, all individually unique. And once we utter the word is the same instant in which we limit its being. Imagine this. The feeling of I love you is infinitely more powerful than just hearing the phrase I love you. It can have no power or all the power in the world. And lastly, before I go on too long, have the day you were meant to have.